Today we're going to focus on the skill of rounding numbers to different place values. And this is a really important skill throughout all of math and throughout all of normal everyday life. Let's read our I can statement. I can round numbers to different place values with a visual aid and without a visual aid. So we're going to start a little easier with a visual aid, and then it's going to be time to experience it without a visual aid. So on the left here, you'll see my first visual aid. It's a number line that is vertical instead of horizontal. As you can see, if I flip it on its side, it's just a number line going horizontal now, and now it's a vertical number line. Today we're going to talk, I'm going to use the example of different sized towns. And we can imagine that there are very, very small towns, there are medium-sized towns, there are bigger towns, there are huge cities, and if we were talking about a whole state or something even larger, we would have different numbers, different size population. The first number we're going to start with is we're going to imagine that a town, so a very, very small town, has 58 people in it. And if I were to place 58 on this visual aid, this number line here, it would go in between 50 and 60. And if I wanted to get to know about how many people live in that town, I wouldn't want to round it to the nearest 100 or to the nearest 1,000 because this is nowhere near 1,000, and it's in between 0 and 100. That would not give me a very good estimate. So I'm going to round to the nearest 10. So if I look at my number line here, I can see that it's in between 50 and 60. And since this is not a perfect number line, it's kind of harder to tell which it's closer to. But if I were to think about it and say 58 is right here, how far is it away from 60? Well, 59, 60. So it's 2 away from 60. Whereas I know it's 8 away from 50. So which one is it closer to? Of course it's closer to 60. If I wanted to do this without the number line or without the visual aid, I could do this. I would underline the place I'm trying to round to, the tens place. If I were to round down, that number would stay the same, that digit. So it would say 50 instead, 50. If I were to round up, the tens place here would get bigger by 1. So that would be 60. So those are my two closest tens if I'm trying to round to the tens place. Then I'm going to look at my next door neighbor, which in this case is the ones place, so just to the right, and it's going to tell me whether I'm closer to 50 or 60. And I could say my rhyme if I want. 0 through 4 hit the floor. No, that's not 0 through 4, so it's not going to hit the floor. It's not going to go round down. Or 5 through 9, climb the vine. Yes, that is between 5 and 9. It is going to round up to 60. So I got the same answer either way. Take a moment and think about that. Pause it. If it didn't make sense, back up and re-watch it again. Remember, that time we were rounding to the nearest tens place. I'm going to keep moving forward, so pause it if you need to. This time, the population of my next city has a population of 326. And I could round that to the nearest 10, but this time I want to round to the nearest 100. So here's my visual aid for this problem. Again, I want to round to the nearest 100. Well, 326 on this scale, or this visual aid, I know it's more than 300, but it's less than 400. So it's somewhere in between here. If I look at my number, I'm going to underline the hundreds place. Remember, I'm rounding to my nearest 100, as you can see by my scale. And I'm going to circle the place value right next door, which in this case is the tens place. So the tens place is going to tell me to round up or down. If I were to round down, my hundreds place would stay the same and everything else would turn to zeros. If I was to round up, my hundreds place would go up by 1. So it would be 400. So now I want to think, which one am I closer to? Well, if I was just considering this 2, how far am I away from 300? Well, 10, 20. So it would take me 20 about, or 26 actually, to get closer to get to 300. If I were to round up, let's count on by tens. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. I couldn't even make that many bumps because there were so many. It took me 80 to get up to 400. So obviously this is closer to 300. But if I want to do it without the visual aid and just do it numerically, here's what I would do. As I've already done, I've underlined the place value I'm rounding to, the hundreds, circled the tens place, and this tens place is going to tell me to round up or down. I could say my rhyme if I want to. 0 through 4, hit the floor. That is 0 through 4. It's a 2. So it's going to round down to 300. Same answer. Now, sometimes people get confused and they jump all the way over to the ones place. Let's try that for a second. If I were to use the ones place here to round up or down, is that 0 through 4 or is that 5 through 9? Is it 0 through 4 hit the floor? No, it's not. It's actually 6. So this would actually tell me to round up. But 6 is such a small number, whereas the tens place, 20, represents much more. So the 20 tells me, yes, I'm much closer to 300 than I am to 400. So that's why we need to use the place value right next door. All right, I'm jumping all the way up to the biggest size city I can think of now. And our new population is 4,627,289. So this is a very big city now. I need to think about what would make the most sense to round this to. Would it make sense to round it to the nearest 10? Not really, because that doesn't make it any easier for me really at all. Would it make sense to round to the nearest 100? No. In this case, I really want to round it all the way to the millions place. I want to say, what is the closest million? So I would start at 0 million, and my next increment would be 1 million, and my next increment would be 2 million, and so on. So here I've got all of them now, all the way from 0, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 8 million, 9 million. So I have to think about my number, 4,627,289. Well, it's more than 4 million, but it's not quite 5 million. So that would go in between 4 million and 5 million, probably right about here. In the case of this number, I'm going to use the place value right next door, as I've always done. And that place value is going to tell me whether to round up or down. If I were to round down, my number in the millions place, remember we're rounding to the nearest million, and if I were to round down, this place value, the millions place, would stay the same, 4, and the rest would turn into zeros to the right. And if I were to round up, my millions would get bigger by 1. So instead of 4 million, I would have 5 million. Then I check the hundred thousands place. That's right next door, right? Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. So my 100,000s place, and it's going to tell me to round up or down. Is it 0 through 4, hit the floor, or 0 through 4, round down? Or is it 5 through 9, round up? Well, that's a 6, so that is in between 5 and 9, so that would round up to 5 million. And if I were to look here on my scale, and I wanted to figure out, is it going to be closer to 4 million or 5 million? Well, it's 4,600,000. So if I were to go down, it would take 600,000, 500,000, 400,000, 300,000, 200,000, 100,000, 4 million. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600,000 away. If I were to round up, let's see, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, 900,000, 5 million. That's only 400,000 away. Obviously, closer to 500,000. So as you can see through this lesson, it matters what place value we round to based on how big our number is. The visual aid that we use on the side, the number line, can help us, whether it's vertical or if it's horizontal. Check yourself to see if you've learned our I can statement for today. I can round numbers to different place values with a visual aid and without a visual aid. Without the visual aid, it's really important to remember, you can remember this rhyme, or you can remember that it's just 0 through 4 is going to round down. 0 through 4, hit the floor, round down. And 5 through 9, climb the vine. It's going to go up. So this is something you could use without the visual aid, or you could use a number line to help you as a visual aid.